Oh, hey, guess what that was? That was Metallica with Hero of the Day. I did it. I managed to fit some metal in, and you didn't even know it was going to happen. See, it's not so bad, right? It's not so bad. That's it. It's just you gotta go with it. Just kind of relax, let it flow in, right? That was Metallica with Hero of the Day off of their S&M Symphony and Metallica album, and you probably are like so, but I have to say I'm feeling so tremendously proud of myself that I found a way to fit some Metallica in on a show about spirituality. And my friends, you guys know I'm into metal, and it doesn't really fit with the positivity. And a lot of times I start talking about Metallica, and people kind of roll their eyes, but I did it. And I am very proud. And that actually brings us into the beginning of our second hour of Rise Up with B. Dave Walters, broadcasting live on Party 93.4 FM and Party 94.9 in Hudson Valley, New York, worldwide on party934.com. And of course, the video portion of this, as always, is streaming on justin.tv /B. Dave Walters. So in the first hour, we kind of talked about, little minor things about what God is like, how God thinks, and kind of how all of creation came into being, kind of some light talking. And now I want to share some other ideas in different ways that some of these same realities have been observed and set up and divided by some other people and what you can do with this. And the next thing is how they did it over in China, which if you've ever heard of an idea called um, yin and yang, I'm sure you've seen the yin yang symbol. It's black and white, the two fishes kind of swirling. Sometimes you see the black and white with one dot on each side, a little bit of black in the white side and a little bit of white in the black side. That's actually inaccurate. I mean, it's what it's supposed to show is the constant interplay of forces. Now, my favorite one is you take a yin yang symbol and it's got the little clear dot in the middle. And what that's supposed to signify is the first thing, and tell me where you've heard this before, is wu, which is nothing. The very first condition is nothingness, no thingness. And out of that zero comes two things, the yin and the yang, the male and the female, the gravity and electricity, positive and negative, up and down. Out of nothing, out of no thing is born two things. Interesting that idea keeps coming up, huh? That now this is over in China, that 4,000 years ago, they also, through power of observation, divine revelation, whatever you want to call it, realized the exact same thing, that out of the world of nothing, out of the realm of no forms, the first thing that emerges is two forms. Right? Like some religions actually kind of stop right there, that they're very dualistic. Zoroastrianism was like that, Orphism rather, is like that. Actually, most religions before Christianity, believe it or not, or I guess technically before Judaism, well, actually not quite. Even Judaism has the idea that there's going to be this final apocalyptic battle between good and evil, but that good's going to win. And Christianity kind of inherited that. But if you pay attention to what Jesus actually said, he wasn't really talking about this final apocalyptic battle between good and evil. That's more revelations and some other things. Jesus was kind of just like, hey, you can know God. I opened the way for you, so good times. Enjoy yourselves, right? But a lot of religions had the idea that sometimes they were way more equally matched. Like Judaism and Christianity, we kind of feel like that when the final battle comes, and I guess Islam is the same way, that God or Yahweh or Allah is kind of going to roll the forces of evil and they're just going to get smashed. But some other religions held that it might not actually be quite so clear. In fact, things like the Mayans and the Aztecs believed that their creator god was a god named Viracocha, who actually was a lot like Jesus. Some say that Viracocha was Jesus, that he just came across the ocean, but I don't know. Take that as you will. But Viracocha shows up out of the ocean. Like he literally rolls in on a boat, and it's kind of like, oh hey, natives, let me lay down art, culture, medicine, science, and everything for you. And that's why you have the pyramids and everything down there. And that Viracocha was actually running from something. Viracocha was like, man, they're after me. We're going to have a final battle and we're going to win in the end, but I got to get out of here because they're coming. And as soon as Viracocha leaves, and you see the him depart in some of the cultures of South America, then further up the Yucatan Peninsula, you see a guy named Kukulkan appear in Mexico and teaches them all the same things and teaches them very similar architecture and very similar religious beliefs. And again, he's like, I gotta go because they're after me, and leaves and promises to come back. Isn't that interesting? In fact, Kukulkan prophesied when he would come back, and he gave them an exact year that he'd be back. And the year that he was supposed to return was the year that the Spaniards arrived in South America. And they were expecting a white bearded man to come from the ocean, and who showed up? White bearded men from the oceans. So if you ever wonder why the Aztecs didn't fight the Spanish, that's why. They were like, imagine it, Christians, if you're like, Jesus is coming back in the year 2015, and a dude that looked just like Jesus shows up in 2015. But he's not really Jesus. He's kind of come to like steal your house and kidnap your children. That's kind of what happened, unfortunately. Um, but well, that was an interesting little tangent I went on there. But the whole point is, a lot of these things have been discovered by people all over the world. And there's many different reasons why. Maybe they were in communication in a way that we don't know. Maybe they just tapped into the same reality. Maybe they were visited by the same outsiders, or maybe they just observed it because it was the truth. But in China, we've got this idea of Wu, Yin, Yang, 0, 1, 2, just like in the Kabbalah, just like everywhere. And out of these two conditions, out of black and white, up and down, electricity and magnetism, positive, negative, we get 5 things. Out of that comes fire, earth, water, wood, and metal. These are the Chinese 5 elements. Like in the West, we talk about air, earth, fire, water. Well, they have 5. And it's interesting because there is a dynamic interplay between these things. They're not just fixed. Even in the West, even when you understand air, earth, fire, and water, they're not just fixed either. And spirit is the 5th element. But in this system, spirit is represented by metal, which is sometimes also called gold, because it's the precious thing. But when you look at this, you see that there is an opposition that takes place. If you put these 5 circles, imagine if you arrange these 5 elements in a circle around each other, then you can draw a star in the middle of which ones oppose each other. That water extinguishes fire, that fire burns wood, that wood splits earth, but the earth absorbs water, right? That everything exists in balance constantly, that no one force is stronger than the others. Think of it as rock, paper, scissors with 5 things instead of 3. So in the center you have nothing that becomes yin and yang. Out of yin and yang you get fire, earth, gold or metal, water, and wood. But even though water extinguishes fire and fire burns wood and the wood splits earth and that the earth absorbs water, fire creates earth, right? This is the ring on the outside of the circle. If they oppose each other on the inside, they create on the outside. Fire creates earth. Now you might be saying, how does the fire create earth? Well, when fire burns something, what's left? Ash, right? Ash. The earth creates metal. Where does metal come from? Out of the earth. You go down and you mine it up, right? That's where metal's born, in the earth. Metal creates water. How does metal create water? When you melt metal, what's it do? It becomes a liquid, right? Flows, okay? The water creates wood. How? You got to water plants for them to grow, right? And finally, wood creates fire because it burns. And then you're back to the beginning. Now think about that. Think of how mind-blowing that is, that people sat down through observation, meditation, connection, whatever, and discovered that you could boil life down into two fundamental forces that became five fundamental forces. And out of these five forces, you could explain absolutely everything. This is how Chinese medicine works. That you go to a Chinese doctor, they're going to look because there's same thing. They've got correspondences between which element affects which organ. If you've got this illness, it might be because you've got, too much water in your energetic system and in your physical system. This is what acupuncture does. Acupuncture balances the flow of these energies. And this might seem like some kind of like, crazy voodoo foolishness to you. And the only explanation I can give you is that it works. It works. That is logically and internally consistent. Now, here's the thing. It's symbolic, though. You follow me? It's symbolic that earth, fire, metal, water, and wood create everything. Because yeah, you look at something under an electron microscope, you're not going to see any wood in it. That's not the point I'm making. That's not the point they're making. It's that you have to call it something. And believe it or not, these five things really do kind of line up with fundamental forces of physics. But I'm going to go the easy way this time. I'm not going to lay down anymore like, Heisenberg or, Schrodinger's cat or anything, although apparently I have to mention it every week. Just trust me on this one. That there is a stronger connection between this idea of five elements and the fundamental forces that bind the universe together than you might think. It's not just crazy, and it's more importantly, it's internally consistent. See, a lot of the things that we do are just agreements that we have. It's like the way that we measure time. There's nothing innately correct about splitting the day into 24 hours and an hour into 60 minutes and a minute into 60 seconds. It's just an internally consistent system. Does that make sense? That's why different people have different calendars. You hear about the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar, the Mayan calendar, which everybody's on about 2012 right now. I think I got to talk about that in the future. The Jewish calendar, the Islamic calendar, because there's lots of different ways to measure time. It's just as long as it's internally consistent. Does that make sense? I mean, you could measure the entire year as, well, heck, we do measure a year as a single unit of time, right? Like if you're trying to measure a million years and you're trying to measure a million years in terms of months, then the numbers are going to get way too big too fast. It doesn't have any external truth to it. It's just a symbol, right? You follow me? And that's the same way that you can label these energies as Kabbalistic. You can say that, there's you have a blockage in your sphere of understanding, which is preventing you from working through these things. And if I can see as a Kabbalistic counselor that there's blocks in your understanding, then I can give you these exercises to rectify that. But if you go across the street to a Chinese doctor and he might say, oh yeah, you've got your fire is too low. Your other elements are raging, but you don't have enough fire. So do this, eat this. Let me perform this acupunctural treatment on you. And it removes the blocks and allows the energy to flow, and you get the same result. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So the goal is to have balance in those elements. And how many times have we talked about balance? How many times have we talked about the fact that you kind of want everything going? Now, obviously, you can go talk to an acupuncturist or something, but you can look at this in your own life, and you can look and say, maybe you're an absolute rock star at your job. Maybe you have a fantastic job. Maybe you have a really great connection with your parents, but you're terrible in relationships. Or maybe you have a good relationship, but you have a terrible relationship with your children. Maybe because you're a workaholic, which is what made you a rock star, right? So you can look and see what are the elements of your life, what are the areas of your life that are out of balance, and how can you bring them into balance. And I actually wrote an entire book about this, which it's time for my plug now. You can go to my website, peacelovemoney.com, peacelovemoney.com. And I wrote an entire book called The 49 Lost Secrets of Peace, Love, and Money. And what I did was I took those 7 universal laws that we talked about before, and I applied them to the 7 areas of life. We haven't even talked about the 7 areas of life here, but I did. And I showed how you could apply mind and mentalism and correspondence and rhythm and gender and cause and effect to each thing in your life and how you can use that to improve yourself and how you can use that to make your life better. But in the meantime, until you read my book, which you should because it's awesome,